guys,
Hey.
It's Mark and Michelle. And
episode 31.
Yep, episode 31.
No one knows we're on.
Right? No one knows we're on because we didn't announce it, but you'll know as soon as we get done with it. So,
or you know now, and you might click.
Right, there you go. And you can watch us really live. But subjects we were going to talk about today.
Well, we had a crazy week.
Yeah, we had a crazy week. Oh, yeah.
But when do we not have a crazy week?
I don't know. We're crazy that way. So we're crazy people, so we attract crazy weeks.
We had Mark's birthday party last night.
Yep, and that was fun. I didn't know I had made so many friends at work, and that was cool to know. Some of my one of my best friends, she couldn't come though because she had a really bad migraine. So, but that's all right.
But what was interesting is watching Mark emotionally interact with others. I've never seen that before.
Well, you know, and that's true because you don't see me at work when I interact with them. Yeah, so it was a new experience.
Yes.
We can talk about that.
It was remarkable, really. Remarkable.
And well, we can talk about that for a minute if you want.
We can talk about whatever comes up.
Okay, well, let's talk about that.
So I don't know why this cat wants to sit in me.
I know normally he doesn't. He's trying to push away and get off, get down. But let's see. I had most of the friends that came over were in their 30s.
Someone said hello.
Oh, hi, Michelle.
Hi.
Singh. How are you? And thanks for joining us. If you have questions, you can ask them right here, and we'll answer them live. And so I had a range of friends in age, from 40s, well, 50s, all the way down to 20s. And
oh, wasn't one of them like 19?
Who's 19?
Maybe she's 20. Hannah?
Yeah, I think she's 20.
From high school.
Yeah, I was like, wait a minute, maybe she is 20. I didn't realize
she was there while I worked there.
Yeah.
That's pretty weird.
That is kind of weird. Michelle works at a local high school here, and one of the girls that came graduated from that high school, which I didn't know.
I didn't know.
And she only graduated 2 years ago. So
I worked there when she was there.
Yeah.
So an authority figure to a friendly figure.
Exactly.
It's pretty weird.
And so she and her friend Alicia came, and they, which was interesting because Michelle saw me interact with all of these different aged people, which are all people I work with.
Yes.
And which she found interesting because she saw me light up.
Yep.
Around people, which she's never seen before.
That was weird. But I also noticed that he was kind of lighting up around me. So that was cool.
Well, see, now you see how equally important, well, more important.
More important. I mean, I really did kind of see that.
Well, I think you needed to see that.
Yeah.
Because with all of the issues we've worked through with me having friends and that kind of stuff, I think it was important. I think you needed to see that.
Yeah, it was pretty cool.
And I wasn't playing favorites except for her. So, but anyway, so that was the party last night. We went from 7 p.m. to midnight. Yeah, and had a bunch of friends over that I've worked with. One lady I used to work with in one of the kitchens there at the Whole Foods store, and she came, and I hadn't seen her in a couple of years, which is really cool because at first we didn't get along.
Oh, they were horrible.
At all. It was like a horrible brother and sister.
Aspie, man. He would rant about her, and months. It would.
For months.
Months.
And but now
they're
really
friendly.
Yeah, very friendly. I really like seeing her. And I had to be in mid-recovery to see that I was missing in her. And that's really cool because her and her husband, I used to work for him in another part of the store. So seeing all of these folks and having them over last night was really like a synopsis of recovery, you know?
Yeah, and it was interesting to see that Mark is 50, but he looks younger than some of the 30-year-olds. And that has to be autism somehow.
I'm thinking it probably is. Remember when we did the support group, most of those folks looked much younger than, all those adults on the spectrum, men and women, looked much younger than they actually were. But some looked about their age, but no, they really didn't.
I don't know what it is. I don't know why he looks less than 50.
Yeah, I have no idea, to be honest. But it probably
you're
is.
49 right now.
Well, so I imagine hormones do age you.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is my last day of being 49.
Actually, I think it's emotions age you.
Well, that too.
Emotions can be really damaging.
Yeah, they can be, but you can repair that damage, which is what we've been talking about.
Yeah, medical medium. Yep.
GAPS diet, but medical medium, I think, is really going to be the biggest thing for most folks. A friend of mine contacted me from New Zealand. She's kind of an informal client, and she had lately she had been asking about medical medium, and so we told her she's looked into it and she's going to do that. So I think medical medium is easier for most people. So to heal their autism or any of their other health issues.
Well, and I never liked cooking, so I never liked cooking meat. But I can peel an orange.
Well, she can peel an orange and she can cook an egg. Not that she eats eggs.
I don't
anymore.
eat eggs anymore.
No, but she has learned to cook actually pretty well from me because she's watched me all these years.
Yeah.
But so the 49-year-old, soon to be 50-year-old birthday party thing yesterday was really cool.
Yes.
For both of us, because I realized how far I'd come in my recovery. And I've been talking about ATEC scores with some people, and one woman said, "You're probably going to have an ATEC score of 0 because you're fully recovered." And I haven't yet taken the ATEC
Do you need to explain what that is?
ATEC is autism traits and how many of those you still have left. And apparently the higher score you have, somebody correct me on this if I'm wrong, but the higher ATEC score you have, the more autism traits you have. The lower score you have, the less autism traits you have. So, but correct me. Hey, Judy, how are you? Thanks for joining. And so we were just talking about ATEC scores, and I haven't yet taken an ATEC assessment, but I will at some point, just because I'd like to see if I am 0 or a negative score. I bet I would probably be a negative score now. I'm a lot more extroverted. I'm a lot more extroverted than some of my non-autistic friends.
Yeah. Can I just say this cat is really heavy and my arms feel like rubber bands?
Let's take the hairy little man down. Come on. Come on.
I don't know why he wanted to sit there.
Come on. Here. Come on. You were enjoying that, weren't you? She's all warm. Here, I'm going to close the door. We'll be out in a minute.
So we were talking about, who were you talking to about the MTHR, whatever?
No, I happened to see the MTHFR thing. An adult just recently, I think he was recently diagnosed on a friend's group. He was asking about the MTHFR, and the medical medium talks about how that is really a dysfunction of the liver.
Yes.
And so, it would make sense if the MTHFR slows down detaxing. Well, that would be the liver, because the liver is slowed down from detoxing. So, but I'm going to go ahead and talk about not being hardwired.
Yes.
Okay. So, coming from a biology background, a biology degree, science, and this kind of thing, one thing I can tell you, and I loved all the biology classes I took, but and mostly they were concerned with molecular and cellular biology, genetics, and that type of stuff, is that I think contrary to popular belief, genes are not hardwired. The fact that any gene can mutate means that they're not hardwired. Not only that, if things in your environment can affect your genes, then they're not hardwired either. If you have a gene that says that, well, I can't do this or I can't have such and such, and yet you heal from that situation anyway, again, that means your genes are not hardwired. Just the biological science of evolution shows you that genes aren't hardwired. They change. They mutate by numerous ways. So just because somebody tells you, hey, you have this gene mutation, that doesn't mean it can't be fixed or you can't surpass that.
Right.
Doesn't mean you can't even, you can even fix that gene.
Yes.
Because DNA does correct errors. And I'll tell you, in gene replication, there are hardly any errors. So that being the case, if you do have an error, you have DNA polymerase, a type of DNA polymerase, which is an enzyme, can come back and correct those errors. So your genes are not hardwired. So don't feel like it's a fatalistic diagnosis.
He's saying don't freak out.
Yeah, exactly. Don't panic.
It's fixable.
Genes can be fixed. I mean, right here. I mean, if autism was genetic, then I never would have recovered from it. I never would have healed any of it. In fact, if any condition, if any illness is genetic, then you can't change it at all by diet, by treatment of any kind, pills, whatever. But for me, autism was changeable. And since it was, that means I could probably improve it, which I did. And I improved so much, I improved right out of it. Mm-hmm. So genes, your biology is not hardwired. It isn't. It's changeable. If it wasn't, what you were born with is what you were stuck with.
Yes.
And you're not.
Right. So we're saying don't panic.
Mm-hmm. Don't get upset. Don't freak out. Things can and will get better if you slowly work towards can and willing to get better. Yeah.
Right.
So, but anyway, I wanted to throw that in there. What else? Oh,
our list is on the whiteboard behind the screen.
yeah, which is why I'm looking behind the screen. But anyway, the confusion thing. There was some.
Yes.
This is important, and I don't know if parents of autistic kids understand this. You may not understand this unless you have been autistic, but when I was growing up, even into my 30s and 40s, up until I started recovery, I never knew when I needed to ask questions. All right. So if I'm training at a job and somebody says, "Well, you're doing that wrong," and I would have said, "Well, this is how you said to do it," and then the person would have said, "Well, why didn't you ask if you didn't understand?" Okay. There's another thing. We'll put understanding and confusion together with this because there are a lot of other things that fall into this. When I was autistic, and I think this is probably the case for most autistic people, you don't know what your emotional state is pretty much at any time. Now, that may not be true for all people with autism, but I think for the majority of people with autism, that is true. You don't know your emotional state at any one time. So you don't know when you're confused. You don't know when you don't understand. All you know to do is, okay, I heard this information, and then you act on the information. I mean, and you don't know when to ask questions. Why? Because you don't know that you don't know. I mean, literally, your emotional center or world or whatever is just not strong enough. I should say it doesn't express strong enough for you to go, "Oh, I'm confused." I hardly ever knew when I was confused. I mean, probably the few times that I did, I would ask questions. But for the most part, I didn't ask questions. People just thought I was slow or being lazy or didn't care. No, it's just that I didn't know when I didn't know. And I think that's the case for most adults. So next time you encounter your autistic loved one and they seem confused, they probably don't know they're confused. In fact, if you can recognize that they're confused, you're ahead of them. So you might ask, "Hey, do you need help with that?"
No, because that won't work either.
Okay, what will work?
Because they don't know if they need help.
Well,
what you do
right.
is you just add more information.
Okay, see,
That's what I do.
Yeah, okay. Her being a teacher of autistic kids and adults.
If I see they're not getting it, I add more information.
You're getting the expert info here, and that's it. So you're getting the expert info of what it's like for me, and the expert info on what it's like in the outside and how to handle it. Good point. Because I thought, well, that seemed like a kind of.
Because to say, "Do you have any questions?" they're always going to say
no.
No.
Yeah, because that's what I did.
So you watch what they're doing. So, like if they're playing a song and they keep missing a sharp, then you add more information.
Mm-hmm.
You're not seeing this symbol right here.
Right.
What does this symbol mean? We just talked about it. Mm-hmm. And sometimes that doesn't work because they can't pull it into the next song. You might have just done a whole page of talking about sharps, but that information, they can't pull it into the next song. Mm-hmm. Now, you've talked about that before, not being able to
move from one task to another. For me, and and I've heard that this is pretty much the case for most people with autism. For me, moving from one task to another, just the act of ending something and starting something else is gargantuan. I still have this problem. Now it's more of an emotional problem, or I should say an acknowledged emotional problem, than it was when I was autistic. I mean, now I know there's emotions behind it, and I go, okay, look, I can just push the emotions aside and move on. But when I was autistic, I didn't know that there were all kinds of emotions around starting something new, and it was so difficult. Just ask her.
Yes.
She had to live through the angst of, God, I can't get started. Well, just begin with the tiniest. And so we'd spend hours belaboring the point of trying to get started, and I still wouldn't get started. And
he had to get started getting started to get started. Pretty
much. I mean, yeah, I had to be willing to get started.
Yes.
and even then, that wasn't willing enough.
Right.
And so basically what we're talking about is we're not connected to ourselves on the inside. Maybe that's a good way to put it. And because you
talked about not having self. Sense of self.
Well, and that sense of self is really knowing what your emotions are, to be honest. That's what I think it is. I mean,
you would know better than any of us.
Well, if you don't know how you're going to act in a certain situation, then you don't really know you. You could say, oh, I would do this. No, not necessarily. Because what I've found since coming out of autism is that I might treat one situation with a bunch of fear, or another situation which is very similar with no fear at all. And so it's hard to know. I mean, you have to know your own emotions to really know who you are, I think. And you might have preferences, like I like World War I planes or computers or whatever. Sure, that's part of you too. But really knowing your deepest feelings about something, when I was autistic, I was not in any way connected with those deepest feelings. I just wasn't. And I knew what made me mad, but that's an easy surface emotion. But knowing that I really loved something, I mean, I liked Michelle, but I would say I loved her, but actually feeling that, nah, I couldn't get in touch with that feeling. I didn't even know it was there. If it was there, now I know it's there. So that's something that you guys might wonder what your autistic loved one's state of mind is, but most of the time it's just kind of neutral. I mean, other than when they're anxious or stimming or something like that, but really confusion and understanding all that kind of stuff. You just don't know that you don't know that you don't know that you don't know. Mm-hmm. It becomes that much of a, what's the word, goose chase, mm-hmm. trying to figure out your own emotions. You just don't know that you don't know, and you have no way to know, to be honest.
Do you happen to remember the first time that you suddenly realized that you suddenly knew you didn't know, coming out of the autism?
Right. Now, when I first started, hey, Rebecca, how are you? And hey, hadn't seen you in a while. And when I first started coming out of the autism, I think that I was working in the kitchen at Whole Foods in prepared foods, and what it is when I first realized that I didn't know, my response was not going to ask questions because I knew that I didn't know. But then all I had to do was stop and remember what my Aspie brain had logged in the past. I brought that information up and was able to continue on. I'm sure it had to do with the recipe.
So that was a new.
That was new. Because I didn't have to ask questions.
You suddenly realized you had a storage case full of information that you could go to.
Right. And then when I realized that I See, it's one thing if you don't have a piece of information. I mean, because you just go, that's simple. But when you don't know that you don't understand, for instance, oh, here we go. This will make,
Okay.
Nonverbal communication.
Hi, Shirley.
Shirley! And nonverbal communication, all right? When you're autistic, you see nonverbal communication happening sometimes when it's very exaggerated, right? But you have no clue as to what's being communicated. You may, you'll see it, but you won't know what it means. And you sit there and you know that you don't know what's going on.
So you actually know at that point that you don't know.
When it's really strong nonverbal communication, when people are doing this, right?
Yeah.
Face palming, you don't know if that's meant for you. But you don't know why they're doing it. But then you realize, wait a minute, I don't know what's going on here. Nonverbal communication is the biggest example of this. And you all of a sudden realize you're on the outside of that conversation looking in. And because no words are being transacted, which is about the only way you can understand with autism, and even then, verbal communication is difficult.
Yeah. Because
there's so much implicit in verbal communication anyway. But nonverbal communication makes you feel like there's an inside joke going on. And there isn't. It's just people communicating non-verbally. And now her and I can communicate non-verbally, and we get it.
And you were going to give us an example of the first time that you figured out that you didn't know. I mean, you were going into nonverbal communication. Did you suddenly realize what was happening with someone with nonverbal communication?
No, I just realized that was when I knew that I didn't know, because I thought that was the example that you wanted. Okay. So yeah, that was the first time.
That's the first time you knew you didn't know. As an Aspie, or was that coming out of it?
No, because I would even, if the nonverbal communication was demonstrative enough, I knew that something was happening, but I didn't know what it was. And so I knew then, because I didn't know what it was, I knew then that I didn't know that I didn't know.
So when was a time that you finally knew you didn't know, but you started understanding?
I'm getting lost. Well, I don't know, to be honest.
Okay, how about I say this?
Okay.
Give me the example that you first understood some body language.
As an Aspie?
No.
Okay.
When you were coming out, you were starting to be an NT.
Okay.
And you noticed something for the first time ever, and you got it.
Okay. Well, a good example is being able to read people's eyes, because that automatically came on. I didn't have to do any work for that to happen. I mean, other than the diet,
Right.
But I didn't
That's a lot of work.
Yeah, I didn't have to do any extracurricular learning.
Right. So like the wires
to be able to read. It did. That section of my brain, the switch flipped.
Yeah. Did it flip on, or did it gradually come on?
No, that flipped on, because before that time I first noticed somebody's eyes and the emotion that they convey, I had never noticed it before. So the first time,
it went from no to wow.
Yeah, it went from off to on.
Yeah, wow.
And so that was the first time I saw something that I had probably encountered before. I just didn't know what it was, to seeing it and going, whoa.
Can you tell us what it was?
Yeah, well, I can't give the exact example, but I remember talking to an older woman, probably late 60s, early 70s, and no offense to anybody that age, but but she was talking. Oh yeah, I think it was Barbara in the writers group.
Oh, okay.
I think it was Barbara in the writers group. Barbara's 75 or 76, and I think she was talking about the loss of a loved one, and it's really interesting because a whole nother layer of meaning got added, because around Barbara's eyes, I could see the sadness in her eyes. At that particular point, I also heard the sadness in her voice, and then I got it. Oh, she's sad.
Right.
Even
though she might not have looked sad. if you were coming from a completely black and white place.
Autistic viewpoint.
Right.
Yeah. There's communication is far more subtle than autistic people know. I mean, it is.
Well, I think it might be more subtle than
Even NTs
regular
know.
people
well,
know.
yeah, and that's very possible too. But anyway, so now that we've beat the dead horse, so to speak.
Hey,
No, you're not the horse.
I'm not saying that.
All right. But that is something that you might want to be aware of is, and you know what? I think most of you probably are. But when your autistic loved one doesn't do what you want them to, they just don't know really that's what you want.
That's right. I mean,
Because
man, it is so hard to communicate.
Mm-hmm. And she knows how to communicate plainly enough verbally to at least get that across. But even then, she's not, I wouldn't, 50% successful?
I often just let it go.
Yeah. I mean, because even an adult with autism, a fully fledged adult brain has trouble understanding verbal communication fully. Because you have to be completely explicit.
Well, and what it
verbal
took me, I was so nice. It took me a long time to be able to say, to be stern,
Mm-hmm.
because I was a nice person.
Yes.
And being stern to me, was not a nice thing to do. But that is how you have to communicate
Cut through the autism.
to cut through the autism.
Mm-hmm.
And so I learned to be more stern.
Stern is not mean.
No,
Stern is like being firm.
like there's a kid at school, 15 maybe, and he's got to have some autism happening. And he was singing right here. And I had to say, what did I say? I said, don't sing that close to me. And you had to, and he went, oh. But if I had said, sweetie, can you like back up a little bit? That would have made nothing. That would have done nothing.
Made no difference.
It would have made no difference at all.
To where
And he would have still been singing right here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So
it was hard for me to be more stern and straightforward.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, that's probably also some Southern.
Well, yeah, possibly from your dad,
upbringing
because
and-
he's not that way.
So maybe Northerners don't have trouble with that, but I came from a more Southern culture.
Yeah, and that makes a good point. I mean, we've coached parents and spouses that you have to be firm. There is no be nice, not because you're being rude, but because you need to get your point across. So when you say, "I want you to do that now,"
And you also have to say why,
right?
because there will always be a why.
Yeah, exactly. They'll always
Because
ask
they
why.
can't see the why.
Mm-hmm. And the why is implicit for NTs.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
You can see what's happening.
I can't remember the exact first time I just knew why, but it's probably about 2015, about December 2015, because and I don't remember exactly what it was, but I remember going, you said, "Hey, can you do this?" I'm like, "Okay," and I was getting ready to ask why, but before I said it, all of a sudden it popped into my head. I was like, "Oh, all right, never
That's
mind."
interesting. It might have been like just when you take the trash out or something. I mean,
Well, and implicit communication came on too. I didn't have to hardly work at that at all. In fact, I may have had to clarify some things.
right.
But outside of that, implicit communication just came on,
Mm-hmm.
and which was great because that would have been a lot of hard work
Yes.
to have to explain. Well, you know what? It would have still been autistic because if you had to explain all the implicit communication, that would have been just like communicating with autism.
Well, and I was shocked to learn that we were born with innate abilities to understand emotion.
Yeah.
I had never really thought about it, but I mean, this whole experience has made me thought about it. Think about it.
Right? Well, and that's interesting because I could probably write a book now entitled "Don't Take Your Emotions for Granted."
Yeah.
Because while no NT likes the negative emotions, anger, worry, frustration, fear, and that kind of stuff, we deal with those emotions so often that it seems like they're there all the time. But emotions are so fleeting, even fear and stuff like that, they're so fleeting they're just as fleeting as the good ones.
Mm-hmm. But we focus on the bad ones because they feel bad. And,
Exactly. And so now I'm noticing that.
well, you said the other day that we're more in the moment when we're having good feelings, so that's why they don't stay in our memory like bad feelings.
That's true.
Did you say that?
I don't know.
I just now say
You
that?
may have just now said that.
I thought you
You
said
have
that.
coined a phrase,
Okay.
or a fact, or an observation. Here
So
we
it
go.
goes into a different memory bank than the bad ones.
Well,
Did I
and that's
just
true.
come up with
You
that?
just came up with that out of the
You
blue.
saw it here.
See, intuition, right? It works. And mine came on too, even more so than it ever has been. I always had a very basic one, but now, excellent. And that's awesome because we're born. We may not be born full-fledged human beings. We may be born autistic, or we may regress into it. But under the autism is a full-fledged working NT.
Yes.
And if that upsets you trolls out there, oh well. Okay. But well, we had a troll show up on YouTube and posted whatever, and I was like, yeah, okay, it's fine. But anyway,
Anthony William calls them clones because trolls can be good.
Okay.
I just thought that was interesting.
I'll have to see that. But anyway, but yeah. So, is there anything else we wanted to talk about?
Well, I thought we were still in this.
Well, we might be. I mean, I don't know where we're at right now.
Well, I mean, you were talking just now about your intuition coming on, and I kind of wonder now if autism keeps you blocked from your we call it person on the other side.
Yeah, you mean your soul, so to speak?
Yeah.
From communicating with your soul.
Right.
Well, yes, I think it does for the most part. I think women may be different. Me having not been an autistic woman, I don't know.
Right.
But I think women with autism may be a little more in contact and in connection with their emotions than at least most men with autism. I don't. That is a very basic observation. I don't know. But for me, yeah, I can honestly say I was not connected with my soul. I was not connected with the eternal part of me that could inform me of things that I needed to know.
And I think that's even if you're an NT, you might feel like you're not connected, and it might be heavy metals.
Yeah.
And it could be a liver that needs to be detoxed.
Yep.
And so how did we get here, Mark? Well, we started with the GAPS diet.
Yeah, we started with the GAPS diet about 5.5 years ago. And I healed my gut, and I got a lot of huge gains on the GAPS in that 5 years of time. 4.5. And then this past January, we started on the medical medium, and there's been lots of gains, about as many gains in the 10 months on the medical medium
Shocking gain.
as there was in the 4.5 years on the GAPS.
Yeah, I don't think he would have gotten to where he is
without
on the GAPS.
Yeah, without the medical medium, the
Because
detox
it's
and
the
liver
liver.
cleansing,
Yeah.
and all of that.
And
so,
it can't deal with fat.
Mm-hmm. And so I have come a long way, but she's come an even longer way because the GAPS really made her
me
sicker, to be honest.
Yeah.
And so the medical medium came along, and now she's further along than she was even before we started the GAPS.
Yeah.
So.
All right. Well, I guess that's it.
Well, I thought we were still in this.
I don't know.
All right.
What do you got?
I got nothing now.
All right.
I just figured we were still in this.
Well,
okay.
It's been 33 minutes.
That has. That's kind of a long one, but that's okay.
Thanks, guys.
We'll see you next week.
Bye.
Bye.